Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone and enough respected brothers that are out there pushing and spreading the gospel of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai to the four corners of the world. Now, through the spirit of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, I wanted to go into this article, which is an article from Time Magazine, and it's entitled How Trump's War with Iran is Impacting Gas Prices in Asia. And Lord willing, this be edifying. Now, as you can see on the left here, there are many articles that, they're very interesting. But the reason I chose this out of the rest is because it doesn't just focus on, the few parties that we're constantly hearing of, which is Russia, Iran, U.S., and the Israelis, but it actually goes in depth into other countries. And, it's written in a way that I love the way it's written. It doesn't just give you useless information, but it's packed with information, and it's, arranged into digestible bites. And so that's what the whole video is going to be about. Any precepts that pop into my mind, I'm going to be going into it. All right, so let's begin. The title, How Trump's War with Iran is Impacting Gas Prices in Asia. As the United States and Israel's war with Iran continues to disrupt crucial oil flows from the Middle East, governments across Asia are scrambling to mitigate the worst effect of rising gas prices. Now, the war, which has killed more than 1,000 Iranian civilians and dozens of officials, 13 American service members, and scores of people across the Middle East, has also created an energy crisis that is hitting countries around the world. In retaliation for U.S. and Israeli attacks, Iran has effectively closed. Right, effectively means they have a grip on that. That is closed down. All right. So Iran has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz since the war began on February 28, threatened to attack vessels that attempt to pass through the narrow waterway that serves as the world's most important energy corridors. Meanwhile, Israel has bombed Iran's oil depot, an action that has drawn criticism for potentially violating international law as residents of Tehran inhale toxic black smoke. Suspected Iranian strikes have also hit oil refineries and liquefied natural gas production facilities across the region, including in Qatar and United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, forcing a number of companies to halt or limit productions. Disruptions have pushed oil prices above $100 a barrel, their highest level since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And, I believe I have a man, I have a relative in UK who says that it shot up since this morning. He said that it shot up to about 150. All right. So it says the disruptions to energy flows have been felt almost immediately across Asia, which imports around 80% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz and bulk of its energy supplies from Middle East producers. So, right, it's been established that the Strait of Hormuz is an important region in terms of energy supply. And so we're going to focus on jump down to these countries and what specifically is going on in there based because of the war that Trump started with Iran. So it says Bangladesh, which imports around 95% of its fuel needs, is having to adapt to the looming energy crisis day ahead of Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the month of Ramadan and is a significant holiday for the Muslim majority country. Authorities have taken a series of emergency measures, including rationing fuel. The Eid period in Bangladesh is marked by a 7-day holiday from March 7 to March 23, and these are Persians also, all right? at a certain point in time when the British Empire had its hold on India, this is all considered part of India. But when they left, to prevent this vast majority of people from being unified, they started breaking up these regions. And at least, the last time I checked Wikipedia, um, at least the last time I checked, that's how it came about, or at least that's one of the main reasons why, there's a distinction between Bangladesh and India and even Pakistan, right? So, um, at least 15 million people are expected to travel out of Bangladesh's capital of Dhaka to celebrate, according to Road Transport and Bridges. So this shows you how the Lord is really interrupting. um, he's really interrupting the lifestyle of these heathens. That's why the scripture says, "I hurt not the oil nor the wine." Right? Let's get in the book of Revelations, the 6th chapter. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 6, verse 5. It says, "And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the fourth beast say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny." Now, a penny, to the common man, is a lot of money. It's a day's wages, right? So, a measure of wheat for a penny, meaning, just a wheat that's barely enough. And it says 3 measures of barley for a penny. In other words, there's going to be scarcity, right? And we're seeing, the beginning of it from here, where people are expected to celebrate this Idul Fitr. Is Idul Fitr. I don't know how to properly pronounce it, but it's an Islamic holy day, right, or celebration. And it says here that this period, because of this period, it is at least 15 million people are expected to travel out of Bangladesh. I'm not really sure where it is that they go. My best guess is Mecca, but here it is that they're trying to go. But because they don't have the oil, because you know, because the Islam is not the oil and the wine, it's hurt. Because the determination of the Lord was that the scarcity affects every aspect of life except the oil and the wine, which represents the truth. All right? And so this truth is the only thing that's flourishing right now, right? Showing you that prophecy was never meant to be scoffed at. It was never meant to be put off from day to day. It was never meant to be at the back of your mind. It was supposed to be your number one priority, and how you move in order to what? Escape the judgments that are foretold in prophecy. Okay? So it says, at filling stations, long queues have become a daily sight. The government has stationed troops at depot to prevent hoarding. Even so, panic buying has driven fuel sales to more than double their levels in early March. Despite officials at the government agency Bangladesh Petroleum Corporation reportedly cautioning that the increased demand is not justified, authorities have also taken other measures in hopes of curbing demands for fuel. Universities have closed, the Eid light displays have been turned off. Meanwhile, the government is also trying to secure alternative fuel supplies from China and India. And man, these BRICS are making money. They are making so much money, it's making the West's head spin. I believe, what was it? Japan, which is an ally of the United States, bought. I think what did they bought oil from Iran or something like that. It was one of these BRICS nations, but they bought they bought oil from the east using the Chinese yuan. Oh yeah, they bought oil from Iran using Chinese yuan. So the dollar is now nowhere in sight. I mean, it's still being used by some people, but people, the hatred people have for Esau, I mean, it has been boiling up so much that eventually it's going to spark into World War Three. In World War Three, and I mean, in World War Two and World War One, Germany was the problem, but now it's Babylon, right? And Israel. When it comes to India, India imports around 90% of its crude oil and almost half of its liquefied petroleum, gas, and around half of the former, and more than 75% of latter pass through the Strait of Hormuz. A week after the war broke out, the country of nearly 1.5 billion people invoked emergency powers to redirect their LPG supplies from industrial users to households. Surging oil prices are putting India's economic growth at risk, which, oh, I guess not. I mean, I guess Israel, India is not making as much money as I thought, or maybe they are, right? Maybe the word risk is maybe throwing me off, but I know definitely that China and Russia are making money, right? And if India is part of the BRICS coalition, then definitely, right, the economy growth may be at risk, but they certainly aren't suffering like, Bangladesh, for example. So it says, surging oil prices are putting India's economic growth at risk, you know, because people can't afford it. You may, uh, yeah, people can't afford it. Businesses in India have begun to take steps to curb their use of cooking oil and gas, while small businesses, including roadside stalls, are struggling with rising costs. Some restaurants across the country have raised prices, stopped deep frying food, shortened operating hours, and scaled back menus. Some have also switched to using, induction over gas burners, while others have turned to sourcing LPG cylinders from the black market. The impact on India is also rippling into neighboring Nepal, which relies heavily on India for fuel and trade. In a landlocked country, households are grappling with rising prices, while authorities have begun distributing half filled cylinders of cooking gas to manage panic buying. Jump to Pakistan. Pakistan, another country that is highly dependent on the Middle East for its energy, is caught up in its own war with Afghanistan. Kabul said that Pakistani attacks have killed hundreds of people in Afghanistan, including at least 400 people in airstrikes on drug treatment hospitals on Tuesday. Let's see. Uh, Around 85% of Pakistan's oil and the LNG imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz, mostly coming from Gulf states. And so Pakistan has sent warships to escort its merchant vessels in the strait. The government has also introduced a number of fuel saving measures, including curbing fuel allowances, encouraging work from home, and temporary closing schools. Hurt not the oil and the wine, right? And we're going to see that distinction that the Lord makes. The power of the Lord, man, to disrupt the entire world. Just like that. Sri Lanka, an island nation to the south of India, imports virtually all of its crude oil and imports coal for electricity generation. The country imports the bulk of its crude oil from the Middle East, and its single operational oil refinery was built by Iran. It also buys refined petroleum products from Singapore, Malaysia, and South Korea, the latter which recently capped exports to prioritize domestic needs. Yeah, no, ain't nobody trying to sell oil no more because it's scarce. Uh, Schools and universities will also operate 4 days a week. Essential services, including hospitals and emergency services, are continuing normal operations. Meanwhile, motorists have been lining up at petrol stations to collect their limit of 15 liters of petrol or diesel per week. Officials have raised concern that enduring shipping disruptions due to a prolonged conflict could impact the country's ability to fully recover from its economic collapse in 2022, when Sri Lanka experienced persistent power cuts, shortages of fuel and other essentials, and an inflation rate topped 50%. China, which has a long standing relationships with Iran that has historically shielded it from validity in times of conflict, imports around 40% of its oil from the Middle East. Asia's biggest country is therefore relatively insulated from the oil shock by its energy ties to Iran, as well as to Russia, from which it imports pipelines and natural gas. Iran has reportedly continued shipping millions of barrels of oil to China and allowed Chinese vessels to continue transiting the Strait of Hormuz, which has led some ships to fly the Chinese flag in order to attempt to cross the strait unarmed. Iran is also considering permitting ships denominated in Chinese yuan to pass through Hormuz. According to the Iranian official cited by CNN, a move that could shift energy trade further towards China and challenge dominance of the US dollar. Yep, that's right. Yep. And let me see. Yeah, so when the Lord says that my determination is to gather the heathens, you see how he's given these heathens um, reasons, right? He's closing in the wall on the he's the wall is closing in on them, right? And they have no choice but to get involved. And that's how World War starts. It doesn't start because people always want to involve themselves in wars for no fucking reason. It happened because people had no choice. The things were affecting them. They had allies. The economy was being shot. They wanted the war to end sooner, so they thought maybe they could go in and add their military and everything would be all good. And then eventually things started escalating. After World War II, the world came to its senses and they said, let us do everything in our power to make sure we don't start a world war again. But guess what? He that sitteth in heaven shall laugh. They can't escape the will of the Lord. The will of the Lord is to transition the world from the hand of the wicked and give it into the hands of the righteous, beginning with Yahushua. And so in closing, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rekha Kodash, and Shalom, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yashar, Brakatham, Toy Akibs, and our course to listening in truth and sincerity. May the blessing of God be upon our house. And until next time, Shalom.